يا رب لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا ما رضيت ولك الحمد أبدا أبدا أبدا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. I know you're anxious to start this passage because I'm sure many of you read the word-to-word translation, maybe even some tafsir. Some of you, I can bet, even tried to memorize some of the ayat. So I know you're very anxious to begin the passage of Surah Al-Mu'minun, which is the 23rd surah in the Quran. It begins the 18th juz. But before we begin, and I was debating this, whether we should have this talk or not. But before we begin, I think it's important to kind of understand the relationship between Ramadan and Quran. We know that Ramadan is all about fasting, and we always talk about that, and we hear khutbahs about that all the time. But there is a very clear relationship between the month of Ramadan and fasting, the month of Ramadan and the Quran. And I think it's important that we kind of, if not in detail, but go over it a little bit so that it'll be a good way to get into our subject today. So, the connection between the month of Ramadan and fasting, and the month of Ramadan and the Quran, it's very clear in the Quran and in the Sunnah. In the ayahs that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He talks about when He made fasting obligatory, He says, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. He says the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. Okay, so you can see the relationship right there. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he confirms this in many of his hadith. Many times he says, Shahru Ramadan, other times he says, Shahru Quran. Okay, and one of the more famous hadith that is in Bukhari, where he tells us that, we all know the virtues of Ramadan. But then people ask, okay, it's so virtuous, what can I do, to get my sins forgiven? So in one of the hadith, the very famous hadith in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ, he says three things, and two of them really give you the connection between the month of Ramadan and the Quran. He says, من صام رمضانا إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. He says the one who fasts in the month of Ramadan, right? And there's two conditions. He meets these two conditions, then all of his sins are forgiven. And what are these two conditions? Iman and wahtisab. Having iman, right? Believing in Allah. You're not doing it because your family is doing it, or because there's a iftar at the masjid and they serve really good food. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you have that belief in Allah, that I'm doing it for Allah's sake, right? Imanan. And the second condition is ihtisaban, that you have accountability of yourself, and you're expecting to be rewarded from Allah. Sometimes, we're just praying, but we don't understand what a great reward that's attached to prayer. Sometimes we just fast because habitually we do it every year, this 1 month. But sometimes we don't understand the reward that's, Allah says about fast, about everything else there's a reward attached to it. But fasting, Allah says it's on me, I'll take care of it, right? So these two conditions. So that's the first one, the person who fasts the month of Ramadan with these two conditions. Then right after that, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us another opportunity to get all of our sins forgiven. He says, "Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbi." The person who stands, right? And this is referring to the night prayer, right? Qiyamul layl, tarawih, whatever you may call it. But it's talking about the night prayer. Whoever stands with these same two conditions, imanan wa ihtisaban, then all of his sins will be forgiven. But the question that I have is, what do you do when you stand in the prayer? You recite the Quran, right? It's another way of saying the Quran. So one is fasting, and the other is Quran. So there's this very clear relationship both in the Quran, as we said, and also in the Hadith. And the last point that I'll like to make before we move on to the passage, to give you a clear, to understand this concept a little bit better, the relationship between the two. And before I do that, you need a little bit background knowledge. And that is that when Allah Azza wa Jal, when He created us, okay, we are, we're not just body, okay? There's jism and there's also ruh. There's two elements of the creation of the human being. There's two ingredients. Okay, it's not just the body, but there's also the ruh. Okay, and Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, "Huwa alladhi khalaqakum min turab." He is the one who created you, the body, from what? Min turab. Turab is what? Does anyone know? Dust. What else? Clay. Okay, that is what Allah Azza wa Jalla, He created us from, right? But He doesn't stop there, right? In other places in the Quran, He says, we're not just body. We're more than that. Allah Azza wa Jalla, فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا. Then we blew the ruh into it. So there's two components to our body, okay? To our self. So there's the body, and then there's the ruh, okay? The body is what? Comes from turab. And if we don't take care of the body, what happens to it? If we don't nourish it, if you don't feed it, what happens to it? It withers away. It's gonna die. A week, a month, 2 months. If you don't have food, what happens? Okay, you're gonna cease to exist. So you need to take care of the body, right? You need to nourish the body. You need to give the nutrients to the body. But where does this nourishment come from? Where does the nourishment for the body come from? It comes from that very substance that our body was created from. Okay, we were created from organic material, right? From the earth. Therefore, everything that sustains the body also originates from the earth. Okay, we eat vegetation that grows where? It grows from the earth. Water, where does it run through? It runs through the earth, right? We eat animals. Where do they walk? They walk on the earth. So all the sustenance that we need for the body comes from that which was originated from, that which is turab. Okay. But that's not the only sustenance. That's not the only part of the body that needs sustenance, right? Because we also have the ruh. Okay, that also needs sustenance. But what is the ruh made out of? Does anyone know? Where does it originate from? There's actually the Sahaba, they ask these questions. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ And this is in Surah Al-Isra, right? The 15th juz. And they ask you about the ruh. Allah replies, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Tell them the ruh is from the commandment of my master, of your master. مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. But you haven't been given a lot of knowledge about it. You know a little bit about the ruh. You don't know much. Nowadays we translate it as soul, as spirit, as self, as personality. Different people have different translations for it. But we keep it as ruh because that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla told us about. That's what He named it. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. So that comes from Allah Azza wa Jalla. It comes directly from Allah Azza wa Jalla. So where do you think the nourishment or the nutrients that the ruh needs, where do you think that comes from? It comes from Allah Azza wa Jalla too, right? Just as the body, it would wither away and die, right? If it didn't have the food for the body, what would happen? It would wither away and die. We all agree to that. Similarly, the soul, it needs nutrients, it needs nourishment. If you don't feed it, what happens? It withers away and it dies. It needs that to survive. Okay? But what does it need? Okay? And that also comes from the same source. The ruh came from Allah. The food for the ruh will also come from Allah. And what other thing came from Allah?
Quran.
The Quran. Right? Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَآمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَالنُّورِ الَّذِي أَنزَلْنَا. Right? Allah calls it a light that came from Allah Azza wa Jalla. We all know that the Quran was revealed. أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. The Quran was revealed in the month of Ramadan. It was sent down in the month of Ramadan. Okay? Just as the ruh was sent down, right, to the belly of your mother, and it was blown in by the angel. Just like that, the Quran was sent down as well. And both were sent down by angels. Okay, you see that there's a lot of correlation there. So just as you need the nutrients for the body, you need the nutrients and the nourishment for the soul. But what happens is, the entire year, 11 months out of the year, what are we going after? What are we taking care of? The body or the soul? The body, right? If we're not taking care of the needs of the body, we're taking care of the wants of the body, right? I mean, look at any advertisement, right? Whether it be social media or a billboard or TV or radio or whatever it may be. What do they advertise for? Nourishment for the body or the soul? Everything's about the body. Wear these kind of clothes, you're gonna feel good, right? Drive this kind of car, you're gonna look cool, right? Live in this kind of house, you'll be happy. Everything's about the body, the body, the body. If not the needs, there's a lot of commercials for the food industry as well. Right? If not about the needs, but about the wants. But what are we neglecting for the 11 months? We're neglecting the soul. Right? We're taking care of the body, and we're neglecting the soul. What happens if you neglect it? Right? What happens? It's going to wither away. Right? It's going to fall into a coma. It's gonna get sick. Just as the body gets sick, the soul gets sick as well. They're both elements of ourself. Okay, so that's what happens. But then, so there's no balance. 11 months out of the entire year, there's no balance. Then comes the month of Ramadan. Right? Then comes the month of Ramadan, 1 month of the entire year, and Allah says that you've been neglecting your soul for how long? For 11 months. Now it's mandatory upon you to neglect your body and feed your soul. How are we neglecting the body? Fasting the entire day. How are we feeding the soul? By reciting the Quran during the night. This is how equilibrium is reached again. Okay? This is how we are supposed to get back to equilibrium. Because Islam, it's all about balance, right? It's not only about feeding the soul either. We have to have this balance. Your body has a right onto you as well. No one is saying that you leave everything and you just, become one who just reading the Quran all day and night, and you're being, you're the worst neighbor, you're the worst son, you're the worst father. No one's telling you to do that. Islam is about balance. So Ramadan is about regaining this balance that we were set to be. Okay? And again, it's not enough that we just starve our body entire day. Right? Our soul is not going to grow. Right? The soul is not going to grow until you feed it. Yes, you need to starve the body so that the soul has room, right? And then you feed it with the Quran, and then it regains this balance. Okay? So with this introduction of how the Quran is related to this month of Ramadan, and this is the reason why I wanted to do these sessions and not give you more Arabic grammar, right? And you guys are happy for that, I'm sure you are. Okay, that's the reason, to kind of, because why are we learning Arabic? I mean, what's the end goal? Sometimes we get into mudaf, half of jar, and we sometimes forget, why am I going through this torture, right? Why am I going through it? It's because to be able to benefit from the Quran. Okay, that's the reason. So inshallah, this series, maybe 3 or 4 classes, will motivate you, encourage you to continue your studies after Ramadan, inshallah. Okay. And there's one more thing before we begin the passage itself. The ayah, does anyone know the ayah where Allah Azza wa Jalla, He commands us, where it's obligatory for us to fast in the month of Ramadan? Does anyone remember that ayah? What surah is it in?
Baqarah.
Surah Baqarah. How does it begin? Nashahru Ramadan. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. There's a lot of ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. What's after that? Yeah. Yes. Kutiba alaykumus siyam. So Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina, O you who believe. And when Ibn Abbas, he says that whenever Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the believers, they better stand up. You know, like when you hear a good deal, right? If someone tells you, oh my God, this house is selling for like $10,000, your ears are all perked up and you're like, oh, tell me more about it, right? We're like that. So Ibn Abbas says, when you hear Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, you better perk up like that, because your master, he's talking to you directly. He's addressing you. You claim to believe. So he's saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, you believe, right? So Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam. Kutiba alaykumus siyam. Fasting has been made obligatory upon you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Just as it was made obligatory on those who came before you. It's not something hard. It's not something new. People before you did it as well. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla gives us the kicker. Why? What's the reason for this? لَعَلَّكُمْ, does anyone know? تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may be conscious of Allah. So that you may be afraid of Allah. So that you may have this consciousness and this awareness and this taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jalla. That's the end goal of fasting. It's not about starving ourselves. It's not about being, Allah doesn't benefit from us starving ourselves. It's all about for us, ourselves, to gain this beautiful attribute of taqwa. Okay? Keep that in mind. What's the end goal of Ramadan? End goal of fasting? Taqwa. Now we begin our passage. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد أفلح المؤمنون. Okay, again this is the 23rd surah, and we're beginning from the beginning. And we're going to do the first 11 ayat. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Okay? He says, though قَدْ is actually a very unique word in Arabic. It's a harf that comes before the past tense. Okay? أَفْلَحَ, it's a past tense verb. Okay? It's a past tense verb. So أَفْلَحَ, what type of ending does it have? The a ending. So what type of pronoun is embedded? Huwa. Okay? A shallow translation of aflaha is to succeed. Okay? So who succeeded? He succeeded. Okay? So what qad does, in Arabic it's called adat al-tawqid. Okay? It serves as not only giving emphasis, but it's kind of that changes the meaning where it says it's already the case. It already happened. Okay? It's already the case, and whatever is to come, it's already the case, already happened. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ. Okay? And if I just gave you قَدْ أَفْلَحَ, how would you translate that for me?
Indeed, he succeeded. He succeeded.
He already succeeded. He already succeeded. But who succeeded? Do we have something that is rafa and that is coming after? Al-mu'minun. First help me, is al-mu'minun an ism or a fi'l?
Ism.
How do you know it's an ism?
Alif lam.
Alif lam. That's it. You see the alif lam? You know it's an ism. Okay. Now, is it coming after the fi'l? Of course, it is. Is it rafa?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens when you have those two conditions that meet?
It kicks the inside door out.
So it fires the inside door. So no longer will you translate that he already succeeded, but you would say that the mu'minun already succeeded. Okay? Shallow translation would suggest those who truly believe have already succeeded. Okay? That's a shallow translation. Now we'll go into the word itself. Now aflah, there's different ways of saying succeed, of being successful. Okay, to say that someone succeeded, there's different words in Arabic to use. There's faza, there's anjaha, but aflaha, it's very specific. Aflaha is success that is very specific. Okay? Has anyone heard the word falah before? I know a lot of kids here, they're taking Sunday school, so they should know. What does falah mean? Anyone? Farmer. Right? Farmer. So aflaha, you see that it's composed with the same letters? So it comes from that word. It comes from that word. And now we'll see why it's so beautifully, it's the precise word selection of the Quran. It's so beautiful that Allah chose the word aflaha. And this is why the Quran is a miracle. This is why the Quran is a miracle. The precise word selection. And this is only one reason why the Quran is a miracle. So, to the Arabs, farming was something that was very, very important to them. because they only had very little land, okay, that they were able to farm on. And they had to obviously, farm in that little land, and that farming and that agriculture that was produced from that land needed to suffice for the entire region. So it was something that was very important to them. And incidentally, anything that was important to the Arabs, they would give them a lot of names. Okay? The Arabs, they were a people of fighting. So they have a lot of names for swords. So many names. For horses, so many different names. There's so many different names for horses. Okay? Why? Because it was important to them. So, sorry. So farming is something that was very, very important to them. Okay? But we need to understand what a farmer goes through. Okay? What a farmer goes through. Any type of agricultural society, you'll see that they have yearly celebrations. Okay? They have yearly celebrations. Why? Because they get paid once a year. Okay? And that's very hard for us to understand because most of us get paid bi-weekly or monthly. I don't know anyone who gets paid every 6 months or a year. You don't, right? We get paid usually, bi-weekly. But these farmers, you have to understand their daily schedule. What is their daily schedule, right? What do? They first, right, they hope for a good land that they're able to farm. Once they find that land, then they start, putting in the seeds, okay? And not only do they put in the seeds, right, but they're hoping and they're begging Allah Azza wa Jalla to make it rain. And once, rain is not enough, they're also hoping and begging for what? Sunshine. They're also begging and hoping that, insects don't come and they, create all this, they kill the crops. They're hoping for that. So it's a lot of work that goes into it. And on top of that, daily they have to what? Send out their animals to till the earth. If they don't do that for one day, what happens? Right? Their entire year of yearly salary can be in question. If one day the animal doesn't go, 1 week the animal doesn't go until the earth. So it's a lot of hard work. And while they're going through this hard work, right, they don't see the end goal. Perhaps they can put in this hard work the entire year and come to, payday and everything, there's nothing to be paid. They won't get anything. Okay? That is what can happen. So aflaha is not only success, but it's success after a lot of hard work is put in. Okay? Success after a lot of hard work is put in. So those who truly believe, okay, and let's go to the word. I'll explain the word al-mu'minun and then I'll give you a translation, which will be a paragraph long. But, that's the only way to translate Arabic. If you go into the depth. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, there's different ways of saying al-mu'minun. Al-mu'minun is what? An ism or a noun? Ism or a fi'l? Ism, right? It's a noun, right? Now, you can also say قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Those who believe, those who claim to believe have already attained success. Okay? But Allah uses the noun here. He uses the ism here. The ism is a lot more mature. It's a lot more stronger. Okay? It's more substantial. You know why? Why? Does anyone know why? Because the fi'l, does it happen all the time or is there an instance where it happens? Fi'l is a verb. It starts and it ends, right? But a noun, it's substantial. If you call someone believers, they're always believers. But if you call someone that person believed, not necessarily he's going to believe in the future, right? But that person will believe. Not necessarily he's going to believe he had believed in the past. Okay? So a noun is always stronger. Okay? And it's beautiful here that these people who truly believe, so a translation would be those who truly believe have already attained success after putting in a lot of hard work. Okay, that's a translation that kind of does justice to what the Arabic is there. Because alladina amanu, it's not, al-mu'minun is a higher degree of those who believe than alladina amanu. Because alladina amanu in the Quran where Allah says alladina amanu, He sometimes even complains about that. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ma lakum. O you who believe, O you who claim to believe, ma lakum, what's wrong with you? right? لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ بَعْدَ قَوْلِهِ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Why do you say that which you don't do? Those who claim to believe, you've claimed to believe, then why do you say that which you don't do? So Allah even calls them out sometimes. But when it's al-mu'minun, it's a higher degree. They have a higher status. They're not necessarily being called out, right? Allah expects something higher than them, for them, right? They have a, like, you can just get into Jannah. You can just get into Jannah. But this passage is not only talking about Jannah, right? Who's read the entire passage? Who's read the entire passage before coming to class? Okay, then you can probably answer this question. It's not only talking about Jannah. What type of Jannah is it talking about? Al-Firdaus. What is Firdaus? Al-A'la is the highest, right? So yeah, those who believe, those who claim to believe, maybe they can get into Jannah, right? But Al-Firdaus, this is something else. This is the highest degree. And I have to give you this tangent. It's too good. So, you and me, many people, we talk about Jannah, and we're like, I don't mind even if I, get through the window. Let me just get into Jannah, let me be safe from the hellfire, I'll be straight. I don't really care about, all those big doors and this and that. Let me just get into Jannah. Let me be safe from the hellfire, But, really the Prophet, and Allah, they have high expectations of us. We might not even understand the expectations that Allah and the Prophet have for us. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us what? When you ask for Jannah, ask for what? For those al-a'la, the highest of Jannahs. Okay? They have these high expectations for us. And sometimes look at the hadith or the time when Abu Bakr radiallahu, when the Prophet ﷺ, he's telling Abu Bakr, right, the hadith of that there are 8 doors of Jannah. Did Abu Bakr say, is there a window for, there's a window entrance as well? No. What did he say? What was his reply? Is there anyone who goes through all 8 of these doors? Look at their mindset. It's totally different. The perception of Islam is totally different, And it's good because I would always almost forget to give you this tidbit. Is that, the perception of Islam nowadays, it's like, tell me what's halal, tell me what's haram, end of story. Let me do the bare minimum, just so I can retain the title Muslim. You're a Muslim. That's what I want. That's all I want to do with Islam. There's nothing more than that. Okay, that's the perception. It's very sad, but that's what majority of people think nowadays. But when we look into the Quran, and inshallah we hope that all of us become serious students of the Quran. Okay, the Quran has a lot higher standards. Quran is not fiqh. Fiqh is different. Fiqh is what tells you what's halal and haram. Quran tells you the highest of standards. This is what Allah expects out of you. Okay? So there's a total shift when a lay Muslim, when he was living a life of fiqh, and he comes into the life of the Quran, and he becomes a serious student of the Quran. There's a shift right there, a very big shift. And inshallah we hope that we'll feel the shift, and we'll be able to become real and serious students of the Quran. Okay? And before I go on, I'd like to share this one beautiful quote of Imam Shafi'i. Okay, everyone knows who Imam Shafi'i was, right? And he said a beautiful quote, and this tells you again the perception that the Sahaba had and the earlier generations had, and that we should aspire to. He said, "Oh Allah, you granted me with Islam, and I didn't ask you for it. You granted me Islam. I was born a Muslim. And you and me, we're born Muslims, most of us, right? We don't really respect it as we should, really. So he says, Ya Allah, you granted me and blessed me with Islam, and I didn't ask you for it. Oh Allah, bless me with Al-Firdaus, and I'm asking you for it. Subhanallah. Okay? This is the perception that these people had. This is the attitude that they had towards the Quran. Okay? So he said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Okay, again, al-mu'minun is used here, which is very, very specific. We could have said alladhina amanu, but it tells us that this is a higher degree of people. And this also verifies that, the end of the passage verifies that, but saying this is firdaus al-a'la. So al-mu'minun, the highest degree, right, the higher caliber of believers, and al-firdaus, the highest level in Jannah. So who are these people, right? Once we hear that they've already succeeded, right? Qad meant what? They've already succeeded. Right? So when a believer hears this, those who truly believe have already succeeded. We said, okay, who are these people? Tell us some attributes. Ya Allah, tell us some attributes so that we can at least embody some of those characteristics, so we can be among those people, or considered among those people. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us, He gives us a checklist of those who truly believe. Who are these people? He gives us a checklist. And again, my teacher, he used to say that there's some passages in the Quran that they're muhasaba. They're all about just, it's like that gold standard and you put yourself against it, right? And you start seeing these deficiencies that you have in yourself, right? And he used to say, like, the believer, he's like an onion, okay? Because it has a lot of layers, right? So, you see one thing, you see a deficiency in one thing and you start working on it. Then you read the Quran, you see another deficiency and you start working on it. You keep, you're pulling off those layers. So this is what the Quran should do to you. Again, the Quran, there's ilm that is here, right? But knowledge it needs to be done with the body. So those two things need to be hand in hand. Because a lot of times, new students to the Quran, they get, oh man, they start reading, but that, the ilm is there, but that amal, that the actions, it kind of lags behind. So there's these things need to be in balance as well. So who are these people? And before we go on, I think I should mention this hadith. I failed to mention it in the beginning. I should have. So Aisha radiallahu anha, and this is narrated in Nasa'i, the Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked, how was the khuluq of the Prophet alayhi salam? How was his day-to-day living? How was he? What was his akhlaq? What was his character, his etiquettes, his mannerisms? How did he live his life? And she says, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ Qur'an. His etiquettes, his mannerisms, his day-to-day activities, it was the Quran. He lived the Quran. Okay? He had the ilm, but he lived it. That was the amal. He lived the Quran. And then she recited these ayat. Okay? Then she recited these ayat, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, all the way until the end of the passage. So again, we say that we want to imitate the Prophet. We want to be like the Prophet so that, we can follow him to Jannah. We all say that. So this is where it kind of gets to us. Okay, this is what the Prophet did. You want to be like him? Here you go. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. الَّذِينَ is a word that goes back to something. It's a relative pronoun. I think we went through this. Okay? So it goes back to something. So al-mu'minun. Okay? So al-ladina, al-mu'minun is mawsuf. What is mawsuf again? You guys remember? You guys forgot? Mawsuf is sifa, but what is mawsuf? Four properties match. Yes. That's the grammar of it, but what is it? What's the purpose that it serves? Noun adjective. Okay. So al-mu'minun, this is the noun. Those who truly believe. Those who gain this maturity in their belief. Okay? Who are these people? Now this is the sifa. This entire ayah that is coming after it, that entire ayah is a sifa. It's an adjective, al-mu'minun, of al-mu'min. Okay? Who are these people? Alladina hum fi salatihim khashi'un. Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just going back on the aflaha is past tense, right? And when we are translating in the present tense.
How are we translating?
Like, are the believers? Are the believers, not were the believers, or something like that.
No. They have already succeeded. Ed, succeeded, it's past tense.
Okay, so okay.
Yes. Good question. Alladina hum fi salatihim khashi'un. They are those who. Alladina, those who. Okay? And again, alladhi is for singular. Alladina is for plural. Why is alladina used? Because al-mu'minun is plural, right? It was a singular of al-mu'minun. Al-mu'minun. You guys remember page 6 back in the day? Okay. Alladina, those whom they fi salatihim khashi'un. Okay. There is abnormal sentence structure here. And we talked about this before a little bit, I remember. So the normal way of saying this is الَّذِينَ خَاشِعُونَ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ. الَّذِينَ هُمْ خَاشِعُونَ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ. Those who have this attribute or characteristic of khushu' during their salah. Okay? But Allah changed the way. He changed the sentence structure. He says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Those who, especially when it comes to their salah, they have this quality of khushu'. Especially when it comes to salah. They have this quality of khushu' elsewhere as well, but especially when it comes to salah, they have khushu'. Okay. Now, what is khushu'? Okay. What are some translations you guys have read? Concentration. That's the keys. Humbleness is getting there. I see. Focus is the keys as well. So khushu', khasha'. Let me tell you what khushu' is. Let me give you an example and you'll understand. You know, a strict teacher, someone like me, okay? There are two kids in the back talking, right? Two kids in the back talking. And they think that I don't see them. And they're just there talking, right? They might be writing notes to each other, whispering in each other's ear. They think that, they're slick, okay? And then I yell out his name. I say, Abdul Kareem! I yell out his name. Right at that moment, he feels khushu'. What happens to him? He gets startled, right? He feels, that's what khushu' is. Okay? Maybe it's been a long time since you guys have been students. Okay? Let me give you another example. Okay, you're coming down 94 West. Okay, it's a nice day. You have the windows down. You have the Quran playing, of course. Nothing else, right? You have the Quran playing. And, you're just driving and you're going like 85 and you don't even feel it. And then you look in the rear view mirror and what do you see? You see the light. So what happens to you? Huh? That's khushu' right there. Okay, that's what khushu' is. So you have, it's khushu' is they say khasha' al-ard. That's another, they say that when the earth becomes crusty and like when animals walk on top of it and the earth is like dried up, they say that the earth has become humble. That's another way of saying it too. But khushu' is such a fear, you have such a fear that it's shown that your body resembles that fear, right? You start trembling, or you see it on your body. That's the type of fear khushu' is. So in their salah, they are humbled to such extent that they're fearing Allah, and they're humbled to such extent that their limbs are feeling it. Not only their heart, but it transpires their heart, and their entire body and their limbs are feeling this type of khushu'. That's what khushu' is. That's the type of concentration or focus that they say. That's what Allah requires of us in our salahs. That's what khushu' is. That's what we're required to have in salah. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Especially when it comes to their salah.
What do you do to get it?
First step is understanding what's being recited.
If you understand it.
Of course, when you understand it, you know that Allah's talking to you. He's telling you this. And there's many things, and that can probably be a lecture in and of itself, right? But it's a good start. Arabic is a great start. Okay. There's a hadith. It says, وَأَبْصَرَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. The Prophet ﷺ, he saw رَجُلًا. He saw a man يَبْعَثُ بِلِحْيَتِهِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ فَقَالَ. He saw a man playing with his beard in salah. Okay? And he said, لَوْ خَشَعَ قَلْبَهُ. If his heart had any khushu', هَذَا لَخَشَعَتْ جَوَارَحُ. Right? His limbs would have followed and would have khushu' as well. Okay? And that's one thing. If you see yourself, moving in salah a lot, twitching in salah a lot, some people have a problem. They just can't stand straight. They have, and it's only in salah. Otherwise, they're fine. They can sit down and watch hours of the new Batman movie or something. But when it comes to salah, the imam or they're sneezing or they just can't help themselves, right? So if you feel that your salah, you can't focus and you can't stand straight until the imam finishes the salah, there's a problem. You know that something needs to be fixed. And the first step, and the biggest step, is identification. That's the biggest step. If you identify a problem, that's the biggest thing. Then it's easy. Then you know what to do. Then you can start fixing it. Okay? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do in the series, many times the khatib, he plans on talking about all of these ayat. And he says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And he talks about this. And then he says, instead of getting through the entire ayat, because there's so much to talk about, he says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. He talks about salah and he says, أَقِمَ الصَّلَاةَ, and he begins the salah. Rarely do I find a khatib that wants to talk about these ayahs and he actually finishes the entire passage. So inshallah, what I want to do here today is to finish, inshallah, the entire passage. And at the same time, I want to highlight for you the connections between the ayat. Sometimes we don't understand that there are very, very beautiful connections between the ayat. There's an entire study of Quran. It's called Tartib as-Suwar. Or there's even a study of the Quran that studies the connection between the surahs, right? How they're laid out. Okay? Because there's two camps. One camp thinks that the surahs are not related to each other, right? The other camp of scholars, they say no, that's revelation as well, and they have a connection between them, and they study the connection between them. So what I want to do, obviously not for the entire surahs, but here, what I want to do is tell you the connection between these ayat. Okay, so what's the connection between الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ and the ayat that came before? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. What's the connection between them? There's a beautiful connection. So, just as a farmer, he had to follow a strict what? A schedule, right? If he didn't follow this strict schedule of getting up in the morning, watering the plants, this and that, and making sure that, the animals are tilling the earth, if he didn't go through this entire years of hard work could be in question. Similarly, the salah is the schedule of the mu'min. The salah is the schedule of the mu'min. And the mu'min too must follow this strict schedule. If he fails to, pray salah one day, to let it go for a week, his entire work, his entire life's work of good deeds might be in question. Because what did the Prophet say? He said that the line dividing the disbelievers and the believers is the salah. Right? مَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Right? The one who left it, he has disbelieved. Okay? That's a hadith. Right? So just as the farmer, he must follow a strict schedule, right? Just like that, the mu'min, he must follow the schedule of salah. And Allah tells us in the Quran that the salah is a schedule, is a schedule that keeps time of the believers. Allah says, "Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta." That the salah keeps the time of the believer. The Muslim, he doesn't say, I'll see you at 8 o'clock. No, he goes, I'll see you after Isha. I'll see you between Dhuhr and Asr. I'll see you after Maghrib. Everything, his whole life is revolved around the salah. Salah is like, one of my teachers, she used to say that the salah is the pillar. You can change around the furniture, you can change the curtains, you can do anything. But the pillars, they don't move. Do they move? They don't move. That's the salah in the life of the mu'min. Everything revolves around it. Right? So just as the farmer followed the strict schedule, the mu'min follows the strict schedule of salah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. And again, وَالَّذِينَ. This al-ladina is going back to al-mu'minun. The first, if I remember, we went through Surah Fatiha, and we said that what was the mawsuf? Allah was the mawsuf, and how many sifas? Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmin, many sifas, right? So al-mu'minun here is the mawsuf. The first sifa was الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Second sifa, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Those who, especially when it comes to laghu, mu'ridun, they are constantly turning away. When it comes to laghu, they are constantly turning away. Mu'ridun, ism fa'il is used. In next class that we have, we're going to go into ism fa'il. And you guys will understand even deeper what that means. But ism fa'il means that one who does something. Mu'ridun, one who stays away. One who constantly ignores and constantly moves away. Okay? And constantly, because ism fa'il is used. They do this act over and over and over again. But what are they constantly moving away from?
Vain talk.
Lahu. What is lahu?
Vain talk.
Vain talk. What does vain talk mean?
Fazul baatein.
Fuzul baatein, bakwas. Yes, that's good. That makes sense to me. Vain talk is, in Arabic they call it kalam and farigh. It's lahu is any activity. It's not only talk, by the way. It's not only talk. It's not only speech. Right? Bakwas is speech usually, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
My Urdu is not that great. Okay. So it's any activity that is useless, that doesn't have any benefit in this life or the hereafter. If you're working at work, okay, that you hardly do, if you're doing that, then that's okay because you're getting a paycheck. You're sustaining a family. That's fine. Okay, there's some benefit in this life, but lahu is an activity that has no benefit in this life or in the hereafter. Now you tell me, playing PS3 or playing Angry Bird, how is that going to benefit you in this life or the hereafter? Is that any benefit? Does it? Amir doesn't want to look at me. He's doing i'rad of me. He's doing what he's doing. He's turning away.
Sometimes it takes the stress away.
Sometimes, and again, and entertainment. That's good that you brought it up. There is some need of entertainment to take you away.
To keep it going.
To keep it going, and that is okay. Halal entertainment is okay. But when I say PS3, I'm talking about those people, those kids who are literally playing 5, 6, 8 hours a day. Okay, and that's not very rare, by the way. Just to let you know. Okay, it's not very rare. Okay, or even chatting. You're just talking away. What's the benefit?
Music, movies.
Again, like some entertainment, sometimes halal entertainment is actually good for you because it recharges you to go back and do worship of Allah. Recharges to go back and be good to your family. Go back and be, good at work, right? Be efficient and, at work. But some of that, some quantity is good, but not always. Okay, when anything is blown out of proportion, that's when there's problem. So, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Those who, especially when it comes to lahu, they are doing i'rad. مُعْرِضُون, they are constantly turning away, again and again. And this suggests that there is a lot of lahu because they're constantly turning away. And we can probably understand nowadays better than anyone else, better than any nation that came before us. Because our life is lahu. You can't drive, but you see lahu all around. Right? Everything, the television, radio, even our phones now, they have like banner ads. Everything constantly, right? So these people, not only do they understand it's lahu, first, right? The Prophet, he used to make dua, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna tiba'ah. So the first step is recognition. And then you do the act. So once you recognize that it's lahu, then they do this act of mu'ridun. They're constantly turning themselves away from it. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Okay, and now the connection, before I move on to the next ayah. The way a Muslim respects his time is by salah. If a Muslim prays his salah, then he starts respecting time. Okay, he starts respecting time. And once the mu'min, he has this attribute and this characteristic of khushu' in his salah, not only does he fear and is humbled by Allah in his salah, but that carries on through the times that is between the salahs. He is not only humble during the salah, but he is humble between the salahs. So he doesn't have any time for this love. He is respecting his time by praying, and because he's praying, he's respecting the time that is outside of prayer. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. And when he senses any lahu, he's constantly turning away from it. And i'rad, let me give you, i'rad is a very, there's different ways of saying to turn away. Tawalla is one way, right? But i'rad is to turn away knowing that it's there. Knowing that it's there, right? It's like, you're driving, right, at 2 a.m., pitch dark, no lights, and then there's this huge billboard with neon lights that's flashing in your face. You know it's there, okay? Something that you know it's there, but you're turning away. That's what i'rad is. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Okay, now this is the third characteristic. And again, you see walladina, right? Again, that alladina is going back to al-mu'minun. And it's telling you that it is the third sifa, right? Mawsuf is, there's one mawsuf, al-mu'min. Now we're talking about the third sifa, the third adjective, okay? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. وَالَّذِينَ, and those who, when it comes to the goal of cleansing themselves, they put themselves to work. That's what fa'ilun means. Okay? When it comes to the goal of cleansing themselves, they put themselves to work. Okay? Not only are they turning away from external things, right, that will put a dark spot on their heart level, but they're constantly inwardly cleaning themselves. They're staying away from that which is outside, but they're cleaning that which is inside. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Now, this zakah over here, it's not only the zakah of giving, if the giving of zakah every year. If you have, more than nisab that you give 2.5% of. Because then a different verb would be used. It would have been لِلزَّكَاةِ مُؤْتُونَ. Because it's ita is zakah. That's included, but it's not only that. It's not only talking about the wealth. It's talking about cleanse. Because when you give zakah, what happens? You cleanse your wealth, right? But it's not only talking about the cleansing of the wealth. It's also talking about cleansing of the body, cleansing of a lot of things. Anything that you have that's leading to the disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Anything that is leading you to the disobedience of Allah Azza wa Jalla. These people, they put themselves to work and they cleanse themselves. لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلٌ. And fa'ilun is used here, right? There's a difference between fi'l and amal. Fi'l and amal. Fa'ilun is those, let me give you an example. When you breathe, you're doing a fi'l. When you breathe, you're doing an action, right? Fi'l and amal, both are usually translated as action. But there's a difference. When you're breathing, you're doing a fi'l. But when you drink water, you're doing an amal. Okay? Because fi'l is done without intention. It's without thinking about it. It's just habitual. You're just doing it. But if you're drinking water, you have an intention, you're doing it, right? You're going out of your way and you're drinking water. So these people, they cleanse themselves so much that it's habitual. They're constantly doing it. They're constantly cleaning themselves, right? And again, the Quran is what highlights. You need to work on this. You need to cleanse yourself of this. You need to cleanse yourself of this. You have this problem. You have the problem of being greedy. You have a problem of being, rude to your parents. You have a problem, of watching shameful things. You have a problem of doing everyone has their own problems. The Quran highlights these problems. And these people, they constantly are cleansing themselves. This zakati fa'ilun, not a'ilun, subhanAllah. The word selection, the precise word selection. Fa'ilun, constantly doing this again and again. Okay? It's not like they cleanse themselves one time and it's enough. And they can sit back. No, shaitan is constantly working, you need to constantly work too. Right? Shaitan is constantly working, you need to constantly defend yourself and cleanse yourself as well. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. And now there's one temptation, there's one problem that no matter if you're Muslim or non-Muslim, you're young or you're old, you're practicing or you're just a Muslim by name, whatever you are, you're a mu'min or you're a Muslim, whatever stage you're at, you're a woman or you're a man, whatever you are, even non-Muslim or Muslim, there's one temptation that seeks into the heart of every single person. And that's the temptation of what? Shamelessness. That's the temptation of the opposite gender. Okay? And because of this temptation, we know the Prophet ﷺ, he said this was the one very thing that the Prophet ﷺ, he was very, 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 scared for his ummah. And that was the opposite gender. Okay? And these ayahs show us that Allah, we talked about قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ صَلَاةً وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ turn away from love. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ they're constantly cleansing themselves. But now there's one temptation that, again, that's very, very big. So Allah dedicates 3 ayahs. The next 3 ayahs are dedicated to this one temptation. Right? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ 3 ayahs that are dedicated. Okay? And again, we're not talking about the person, who's, prays, only on Fridays, or who only comes to the Eid Salah, and you'll find him in places you shouldn't be seeing him. It's not talking about that person. Who are we talking about? Al-Mu'minun. We're talking about the highest degree of believers. We're talking about those who, in the end of the passage, these are the people who inherit what? Al-Firdaus, the highest degree. So even the Mu'minun fall into this. Okay? If you read the Quran, doesn't mean that you're immune from all these things. If you read the Quran, doesn't mean that you're immune from those things. Right? If you have a beard, doesn't mean, or if you're wearing a hijab or wearing a kufi, doesn't mean that you're immune from these things. It's, it affects, again, every person. Whether he's old or he's small, it affects him. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He dedicates 3 ayat to talk about this problem. He says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. And these are the people, again, الَّذِينَ going back to? These are the people that, especially when it comes to their privates, they are, what is it? لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. They're protecting over it. Right? They're very protective over it. They don't, Allah He goes on, He says, إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. Except that they their privates, they are constantly guarding it. Hafidun is constancy, right? Because it's unfa'il. They're constantly guarding it, except on those people that Allah Azza wa Jalla has made it halal for them to, carry out this act. They only have this intimate relation with those that are allowed, their wives. They only do it to those that they're allowed to do it with. That's it. Other than that, they're constantly guarding themselves. فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. And whoever seeks, ibtagha is to seek, right? Faman. What is it? Famanib. Can someone explain that to me? Fa is what? It means then, right? Or it can mean, it has different meanings, but it's a harf, right? What is manib? What is it originally? To whom, right? Man. It's really man. But when it's connecting to the next word, it gets a kasra. Okay, you guys need to start seeing these things. So, faman ibtagha, then whoever ibtagha, who seeks, who wants, okay, ibtagha, wara'a dhalik. Wara'a, you guys remember wara'a? Better. You got a test on it. You got it wrong too, I remember. Yeah. Huh? Special mudaf, what does it mean? Beyond. Right? Whoever seeks, whoever wants, whoever desires, فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى, right? وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ. So if wara is a special mudaf, what do you think dhalika is? It's not mudaf ilayh, because it's what? I mean, you can call it mudaf ilayh. You can call it mudaf ilayh, but what status is it in?
Pointing?
Huh? Yeah, it is a mudaf, it is a pointing word, right? It is a pointing word, but grammatically in this sentence over here, in this placement, it is mudaf ilayh. And what status is it? So dhalika, if I look at that, if I tell you on a test, dhalika, what's the status of dhalika? You're not going to say it's nasab. Or you're not going to say, oh, I don't know. It's non-flexible. Okay, draw a big happy face and don't do that. Okay, wara'a dhalika. Wara'a is special mudaf, right? Even though it's non-flexible, it's not showing you that it's jar, but it is. You guys see that? Back in module 1, or the study or the world of Islam. Okay. فَمَنِ ابْتَغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. So whoever seeks or desires anything other than their wives or that which Allah has made halal for them, فَأُولَٰئِكَ then, أُولَٰئِكَ those, هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. Those, they are al-'adun, those who transgress, those who, pass the limits. those who transgress or pass the limit. You know, when the ocean, when it, when the water comes to shore, you know, the Arabs say that, you know, it's done adu, it's done i'tada, that it's transgressed its limit. There's a limit there, it's transgressive it. Okay? So there's boundaries set for us. Right? Being Muslims, there's boundaries set. Allah knows what's best for us, so He sets these boundaries. Right? Best for not only us, but humanity and society, so He sets these boundaries. So whoever seeks more than that, then he's adu, he's transgressed. Okay? He's liable to the punishment of Allah. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. Okay.
Now,
Then,
pardon me, azwajihim is spouses, not just wives, right? Or it can be used with men and women both, right?
Yes, spouse.
Okay.
It's spouses. It goes both ways, right? The man,
What's the
the
Arabic
husband,
for a man who's married? Zawja?
zawja.
Zawja. And women?
Zawj.
Zawj.
Okay, so azwaj is plural. Okay, it goes both ways, spouses.
But what does that mean? Because it's zawjakum and then it says
Oh ma malakat aymanuhum, or what the right hand possesses. So back in the, when these were revealed, these ayahs, it wasn't only the wives. So that's why when I translated, I said those that are made halal for them from Allah. So it's those are your spouses. Refers to your spouses. Okay. So 3 ayahs, going back to one subject, which was these 3 ayahs that we did, or these 3 ayahs that we went through. What does it refer to? Shamefulness, right? Protecting yourself. And this again tells us how much more we need to work when you are married to beautify the relationship between the husband and the wife, because that's what keeps you away from shamefulness. You know, it's very easy. A lot of people say that, you know, you come home and the wife asks you how you're doing, and you go, oh, I'm tired. Don't talk to me right now. But you go to work and, you know, your secretary asks you, how was your day, Muhammad? Right? You're like, oh, it was very nice. You know, I'd love to talk to you about it. No, really. So this tells us how, like, we should really have a beautiful relationship from, you know, in the household. And you need to work to do that. You know, sometimes we believe that, you know, Islam, Quran, it's only about praying 5 times a day, being at the masjid. That's all it is. Anything else is nothing. As mu'min, this is telling us, you better work as a wife to make your husband happy. As a mu'min, you better work as a husband to make your wife happy. I mean, as a mu'min, these are jobs that a mu'min is supposed to do. It's not only about reading Quran and learning Arabic. It's not only that. There's more to it. Sorry to burst your bubble, but there's more to it. You know? There is.
I have a question.
Sure.
In Quran, a lot of times Allah says what your right hand possesses. What does that refer to?
Slave.
Halal, just halal or safe?
Yeah.
Oh.
وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. So how many characteristics have we done so far? Huh? 4 or 5?
4.
So we did الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. The first one was salah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. The second one was laghu, right? Useless activity, right? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. Put themselves to work, cleansing themselves. That's 3. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ. This is the 4th one. And then the next 2 ayahs are again, they're connecting back to this one. Now the 5th one. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. And these are the people who, especially when it comes to what? لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ. Can someone read me the translation that they have? The trust that they make and the promises that they make. Amanat is trusts, things that they are entrusted with. Ahdihim, sometimes you're entrusted with something, but right? If I entrust you with something, I entrust you. But there's other times where you make me a promise. So either way, whether they're entrusted with something or they make a promise, وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ, they are watchful over it. Allah doesn't say mufun, that they fulfill it. Mufun is just, again, this Allah calls us to something higher. A fiqh book would tell you, okay, if you took $25 from someone, all you have to do is give them the $25 back. You have to repay the loan, right? But the Quran, it's not just saying mufun, you give it back to them. It's saying ra'un, you're watchful over it. Right? Even the things, even the promises that you make. Because you and me, what happens is that we're only watchful over the things other people have to give to us, right? If I gave you, like my car to borrow, right? If I gave you my car to borrow, I'm going to be watchful over it. I'm going to say, man, make sure you're taking care of it. You have your insurance, right? Okay? Make sure that you put in the 93 octane. Okay? You're always watchful. You're always, because it's my thing, I give it to you. But what about Allah saying? What is Allah saying? Even the things that you receive, be watchful over it. Even the trust that you make. If you say that I'll pay you back tomorrow, or if I say I'll pay you back in a week, you're watchful over it. You're watchful over it. You make sure that you try to pay him back before that. Constantly watching over the trusts that you've been entrusted with. Constantly watching over the promises that you've made. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ayatul Munafiq Thalah. Ayatul Munafiq Thalah. Can someone translate that?
And what is that?
Ayatul Munafiqi Thalah.
Three signs of a munafiq.
Don't make me do this. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but okay. Ayatul Munafiqu.
What's the next word?
The next word is, I'll give you this thalathun. Is it oo, or e? Who thinks it's oo? Okay. Who thinks it's Who thinks it's nasr? Okay, one brave soul. Who thinks it's e? It's jab. No one? Sister Michelle, you look like.
It's the place.
Come on, you guys. Like, no alif lam. Come on. It must be jab. I'm sad. I don't know if I can continue. Ayatul Munafiqi Thalathun. Okay? Signs or indications of the munafiq, not munafiq, hypocrite. Are, why am I saying are?
Because
There's no connection. There's no connection. Are 3, talatun. Okay? 3. So this is the hadith of the Prophet. The first one. إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبًا. When he speaks, he lies. Okay? إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبًا. When he speaks, he lies. And again, this is something that many, if you find yourself just jokingly, you're just always lying, there's a sign there. Okay? إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبًا. وَإِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفًا. What does that mean? When he promises, أَخْلَفًا. He breaks it. He goes against the promise. وَإِذَا تُمِنَ خَانَ. When he's entrusted with something, he betrays that trust. Okay, this is the sign of who? Munafiq. Okay? So, these people, these mu'minun, these really high standard mu'mins, right? High caliber mu'mins, Muslims, they are watchful, ra'un. They're watchful over the things that are entrusted and the promises that they make. Then Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. Beautiful. What was the first characteristic? Huh? Khashi'un. No, but what was it talking about? Salah. It's talking about salah. Now the last characteristic. Salah again. Talking about salah again. The life of the Muslim is the salah. You have the salah, right? Everything between all of these things, it's like it's in the salah, right? It's wrapped up inside the cloth of salah. If your salah is good, everything will find its way. I'm telling you. If you fix your salah, because sometimes what happens is we read these ayahs, right? We read these ayahs, we're like, man, this is too much for me. No, really. A lot of people, they get overwhelmed. They say, this is too much, this is requiring too much change for me, I can't do it. right? I'm struggling with my 5 times salah. How are you going to tell me to stop all these others? It's very hard, you know. It's constantly turning away from love, all this. It's hard. I'm addicted to it. I don't see myself not like just letting it go all at once. But you know, there's beautiful Arabic poetry that wallahi I love. Okay? And the sha'ir, he says, وَمَنْ يَتَحَيَّبْ سُعُودَ الْجِبَالِ يَعِشْ أَبَدَ الدَّهْرِ بَيْنَ الْكُفَرِ. The one who feared climbing the mountain will forever remain in the ditch. You know, put that effort. Yeah, if you're sincere and you take that first step, you know, the poet also says, أَلْفُ مِيلٍ تَبْدَأُ بِخُطْوَةٍ, right? 1,000 miles start with a step. If you put that first step and you're sincere in doing it, you'll see Allah opens the doors for you. He just makes it happen for you. You just need to be sincere. You need to be able to make that first step. You know, you walk, Allah runs. You know, you need to be, you need to have that determination that I'm going to change. I'm going to take that first step. And when you have that, you'll see Allah will open doors for you. And everything, all of these things, it starts and ends with what? Ends with salah. It starts with salah. So if you start, reading this, it's really like eye-opener. Oh my God, I have so many things to do. Where do I start? Allah's telling me, start with salah. You start with salah, everything will fall in place. Right? كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. It keeps time of everything. Everything revolves around it. Everything is the pillar of the mu'min. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. And there's another beautiful, before I end here, there's another beautiful relationship. Does anyone see a difference between the salah that was mentioned first and the salah that's mentioned at last? Yes, that's one difference. Khashiyun, they had khushu in their salah, and over here it's saying that they are protecting their salah. But is there any other difference that you guys? So salati in the first one, right? And in the last one, salawati. So the plural is used. Okay? So subhanallah, you know, the scholars, they say that this act of khushu' they have in each and every salah. Because what singular is used. So it's not only when their child is sick that they have khushu' in their salah. It's not only when they're, you know, about to lose their job that they have khushu' in their salah. It's not only, you know, when, you know, something bad, you know, they got into an accident or something bad happened to them, or their, you know, their parents, someone passed away in the family, that they have khushu' in the salah. The singular is used. In each and every salah, they're maintaining this khushu'. It's a struggle, but they're trying at least. They're having this khushu' in each and every salah. And when it comes to hafidun, when it comes to protecting the salah, all of the salahs they're protecting. Salawat, right? They need to protect all of them. It's not only that they protect, you know, the Dhuhr salah because it's convenient and they can pray it, right? And if they let go the Fajr and the Isha, no, they're what? They're protecting over each and every salah. There's because the plural is used. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. Okay, and this is where the characteristics end. Okay, and again there were 6, right? There were 6 characteristics. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, أُولَٰئِكَ, those who, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ. Those, they are, not anyone else. You know when I say those, they are the ones who will inherit. What do I mean, right? Between the lines. Not anyone else. They are the ones, not anyone else. Okay? So Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ. Those, they are the ones who will be the inheritors. Inheritors of what? الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسَ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And Allah Azza wa Jalla ends, this passage ends, and الَّذِينَ is going back to الْوَارِثُونَ. Okay? الْوَارِثُونَ Mawsuf. الَّذِينَ in the entire ayah, Sifa. Inheritors of what? الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسَ. Those, these are the ones who will inherit يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسَ. يَرِثُونَ is a fi'l or an ism? What type of fi'l? Past tense or present tense?
Present.
What is past?
Present future.
Present or future, okay. What version? Hum. What is the huwa version? Huwa? Yarithu. Huma? Yarithani. Yarithani. Hum? يرثون هي ترث هما ترثان هن يرثن أنت ترث أنتما ترثان أنتم ترثون أنت ترثين أنتما ترثان أنتن ترثن أنا أرث نحن نرث. Okay, so this is a present tense verb, present tense فعل. So الذين, these are يرثون الفردوس. They are the ones who will inherit what? Al-Firdaus. You see Al-Firdausa? Al-Firdausa. So it's the detail of that. What? It's answering the question what. What will they inherit? They will inherit Al-Firdaus. What is Al-Firdaus? The highest level in Jannah. Right? Above, which is nothing but the throne of Allah. It's the highest you can get. These are the people who will inherit it. Hum fiha khalidun, and they will abide therein forever. Okay? So this was the first passage that I'd like to share with you. Hopefully you guys went through it. If not, this is not enough. We went through it, but this is not enough. Really, if you want to make it yours, you need to read this many times again and again. And you won't own it, right? You can probably loan it, but you won't own it until you memorize it. And really, it's only 11 ayahs, right? Memorize one ayah a day. And once you own it and you read it in salah, that's how you have khushu'. You know your question, how do I have khushu'? You know, when you have this deep knowledge of this passage, imagine that. And then you're reading in salah, then everything's coming back to you. Then it's hitting you. Then you have this khushu' in salah. So that's the way the Quran, you start with the Quran and you end with the Quran. You start with the Quran by studying it, right? And you memorize it. And then you use it in salah, then it becomes yours. And then you have this khushu' in salah. So I'll end by requesting really that, again, I'll repeat this because I repeated it last time and many of you guys weren't here last week, that you're at a stage in your Arabic studies where you can really make it or break it. You can really be successful in this Ramadan. You can have a really different Ramadan that you've ever had before. You've reached that level in your studies, right? You won't be able to do this by yourself. You won't be, okay? It's going to take you time. But the things that we've went through, you need to own it. You need to go like, okay, I know what's going on here grammatically, linguistically. I know this word, the difference between fi'l and amal, the difference between alladhina amanu and al-mu'minun. Because you know what? It's going to come again and again in the Quran. That's the beauty of the Quran. You learn it once, it comes 20 times. You learn taqwa once, it comes 200 times. You just need to learn it once. Okay? And it comes again and again and again. So this Ramadan, really, if you put in that hard work, and I remember I was telling you guys, maybe like a year or 2 years ago, I was at your stage where, 1 year ago I was at your stage, where I was, I was going in to Ramadan, okay? Well, a little bit more, actually, 2 years ago, okay? Because you guys are staring at me. 3 years ago, that makes me feel better. Okay? So, really, I would go into Ramadan, right? I would recite in Taraweeh, but I would try to go through the word-to-word translation. Just go through it. Okay, words you don't know. Don't write everything down because you'll write the entire Quran down. But just go through it. You'll do this for the entire month of Ramadan. Things will stick. And subhanAllah, I'm telling you, you guys should testify to this. When I sent chapter 1, or when I sent the vocabulary of the 74 words, that was a lot harder for you to memorize than the last chapter I sent. Yes or no?
Yes.
You're getting familiar to the language, right? It's growing on you. It's sticking to your tongue. It is. Okay? So take advantage of that. And the more that you take advantage of Ramadan and try to do more, start reading word-to-word translations, reading tafasir, helping in your Quran study, asking questions. Why was this? Why was that? Trying to break down the grammar, even if you don't know it, even if you're wrong. Just start, get into it. Even if it's really, I'm not telling you, quit your work and, don't take care of your little, son. No, I'm not saying that. Put in 15, 20 minutes a day. That's it. Not more than that. And I think that's something that every Muslim has the ability to do. And you're at that stage where 15, 20 minutes for you now is a lot more valuable than a person that doesn't know Arabic at all. You will gain so much in that 15, 20 minutes.
Where do we start from? Like the last surahs, beginning, you know?
Everyone has their own strategies.
Okay.
Whatever works for you. This is what I would say. If you can't keep up with the Taraweeh every day because so much, then just start with something small. Start with this passage we did right now. Memorize it, okay? And if not even memorizing it, go through it again and again. Go through your notes. Go through, try to break it down grammatically. There's a lot of things that I left because, it's already 3 o'clock. There's a lot of things that I left, even grammatically, that you should know. That you can go through and you get, mudaf, mudaf ilayh. Special mudaf. This is a harf of jar. All of these things. It's going to help you, all right? And I'll be sending out the passage ayahs that we'll be doing next week, and I'll send them out hopefully in a day or two once I figure out what I'll be covering, and then you can start doing that. You start working on that before you come into class. You have a better understanding of what we're going to talk about. So I'd like to end with that. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us and consider us among the those who have khushu when they pray, those who constantly turn away from lahu, those who constantly put themselves to work when it comes to cleansing themselves, those who protect their privates, those who those who take care of the trusts and promises that they make. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us among those who take care of their salah and have khushu' in their salah. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. One announcement.